wymiar terytorialny polityki spójności. Dzięki funduszom europejskim możliwe są zarówno ogromne inwestycje infrastrukturalne, jak i mniejsze, choć bardzo ważne dla społeczności lokalnych projekty. Każdy region ma swoją specyfikę, dlatego ważne jest takie dopasowanie inwestycji, by rozwiązywać konkretne problemy i wykorzystywać szanse na rozwój. Temu celowi służą instrumenty terytorialne, takie jak zintegrowane instrumenty terytorialne, rozwój lokalny kierowany przez społeczność, a także programy dla konkretnych obszarów wymagających wsparcia. Wymiar terytorialny polityki spójności opiera się na trwałej współpracy rządu i samorządów oraz włączeniu społeczności lokalnej w planowanie i realizację działań. Efektem wspólnej pracy jest m.in. poprawa infrastruktury transportu publicznego, rozwój lokalnych rynków pracy, nowoczesna infrastruktura edukacyjna i zdrowotna, a także inicjatywy lokalne, także na obszarach wiejskich. Wymiar terytorialny jest tym, co wyróżnia politykę spójności Unii Europejskiej, a pozytywne efekty pokazują, że warto iść tą drogą. Dlatego dziś zadajemy sobie pytanie, jak stworzyć optymalne warunki w ramach polityki spójności dla realizacji specyficznych celów rozwojowych różnych terytoriów.
Ladies and gentlemen, good almost afternoon. We are starting just before noon. This panel, as you saw, will be about the means. Yesterday we discussed on many panels about the goals which we have ahead in our common European Union policy. Today we will discuss how to reach those goals with the means and how to choose those means as best as possible to reach the goals to have sustainable growth in European Union. Please welcome on stage Wiktor Szylarowski from ESPON Initiative, who will be our keynote speaker for the panel. Wiktor, the floor is yours.
Michał, many thanks, dear colleagues, as well for choosing this specific panel, and we do hope that you will not be bored to death, and in fact you will be entertained. What I'm going to present to you in roughly 15 to 20 minutes time is to give you a certain context, very much drawing on the recent high-level panel that we saw, and we witnessed interesting discussion about the territorial dimension or territorial approach. So I regard it as a sort of an entrée to the presentation that I'm going to give to you about why data, why evidence, and why policy advice built on it is an important fact to consider. So many of the opinion statements you witnessed during the session just before the coffee break, hopefully you can see illustrated here. So I'm representing the ESPON program, and I do believe that at least some of you have ever heard about what ESPON is about. So a show of hands, who knows what ESPON is? Yes, some of you. And we do hope that after the presentation, all of you will have known what we do and what we stand for. So an Interact program, but very different program, because we do not deliver just money, but we delivered high-quality research expertise that we procure or we deliver in-house through the group of people I'm privileged to lead in ESPON EGTC. Territorial analysis data is a very important cornerstone of ESPON work, and as being an EU-funded program, we do it for the EU countries, the EU institutions, the regions and local authorities, but also to the authorities of the partner states. So altogether, 31 countries. What I'm going to offer you is a certain journey. You will see a lot of maps. You will see the latest maps from ESPON that have just been published or even not yet. So you will hopefully experience a very interesting visualization of why data, why territorial evidence is important for decision making. And also, hopefully, it will be inspirational to the panel that will be led by Michał later on. So, about the mega trends, we heard about that the policies need to be well informed. They need to also understand the meaning of megatrends because we are not islands. So our territories are located somewhere in the space, and the space has seen dramatic transformation. In one of the past projects, we discussed the two spaces that actually coincide, one being the space of places, the other one, space of flows, where you see all different processes integrating, disintegrating the European territories. And in the former, I dare to say, we have a few Ds that often are associated with some very negative phenomena we'll see in our reality. This being discontent, this being division, disparities, and divides. So, of course, we have also a beautiful D letter for diversity, but here the D letter stands for something that is ominous, and actually it is something that we should be very much aware of when planning our policies. Let me start with some divides. Of course, many of us have witnessed the former East-West divide, the Iron Curtain. It was also a matter of spatial planning interest to bridge the gap between the East and the West in development paths. But there are some divides that probably we are not that aware of, and this is the divide that was well encapsulated by the former Minister for Environment in Bulgaria, Mr. Julian Popov, who brought the attention on the air quality divide. And to the right, you see quite a recent snapshot of the situation. And I dare say the situation has not changed. You still see the difference in the air quality we breathe in our cities, in our European cities. And this is the matter that is closely tied up to the, quality of life aspect. So we should also remember that there are some works to be done in order to decrease the specific divide. Another divide is of more recent character, the digital divide. There is an interesting take about the people who never accessed the internet in 2021, where you see a dramatic gap between the North and the South, and likewise to the left, internet users that recently actually entered internet, which again testifies to the problem that we are having in Europe. Many people lack basic digital skills. And because of that, they don't use internet. If they use the internet also, sometimes they do it maybe in not the way that it should be done. So they are susceptible to fake news and, of course, the manipulation of some, debates regarding the political choices. There is also one more divide, and this is a divide in how fit and apt we are to build up, bottom-up way, the renewable energy communities in Europe. You might remember that there is a huge debate and discourse about being prosumeristic. So to assume responsibility to create renewable energy communities that could actually work on their own solutions and be independent on central grids. So this is also an interesting diversity in Europe with regard to how active we are in taking up this specific challenge. And then let me know through the crises and risks. This is one of the projects that we completed in the past ESPON program. It was actually our last research, where we presented some immediate effects of the overlapping shocks that at that time we encountered in Europe. We have here the map presenting the effects of COVID pandemic, the war on Ukraine, and also the climate change on employment, where you see that there are asymmetric impacts, and asymmetric impacts should be well detected in our policies so that we provide the right policy response. Then something very fresh. vulnerability and resilience. This is one of the freshest projects that we've run together with the Polish EU Council presidency to determine how to make the regions less vulnerable, so how to make them fit for purpose. And interestingly enough, you can see that there are certain success stories that are recommended to our decision makers. So there are certain key success factors to be successful in regional resilience. So even if you lie in more remote and peripheral areas, there is a number of quotas that we could use for the purpose of improving the situation. This is a GIF animation, so hopefully you see some changes on the screen as well, where again the effects of different shocks were by our researchers put and projected on the map to see how the regional or territorial variation goes on. So how, based on the performance, the regions could be typologized, and in that way, what in fact they need. And EU funding in that respect is very much needed for those regions to help them increase their ability to cope with different shocks and impacts. This is a matter of huge discussion, and we're happy to see that our snapshots actually raised a lot of attention in Poland. We saw many social media entries regarding the costs of affordable housing or lack of affordable housing, notably in Poland, with how high the rental and the sale prices are. So how many wages we would need in order to be able to buy or rent an apartment in different regions of Europe. And you see on this map how Poland, in that fact, stands out in terms of a certain problem that would result in inability of our citizens, of our residents, to afford a decent living. So this requires definitely some place-based approaches. So by this I would like to say, and once again to demonstrate, that the data and evidence gives a very important building stone for motivating why we need place-based approach, so territorial approach to different policies, not only the cohesion policy, but also in that sense, the housing policy. One more thing is the labor markets. So we know that there are forces of demographic decline and labor force shrinkage. They are driven by some specific socio-economic factor. And, well, there is a certain difficulty in curbing those to achieve a long-term sustainable socio-economic growth. So, again, a sign of attention to the regions in Central and Eastern Europe and the Baltic states, because you see how this decline may look like according to some scenarios that the researchers we procured, the services of, came up with. So this is the matter of not win-win. This is actually a matter of win-lose. And in fact, we need a different territorial response to the areas depending on the situation and the trends. And the role of migration here is absolutely critical. But the migration is the limited asset. So again, who wins, who loses on it? There is another very important risk, which is the risk of population decline. And here we also see how the already sparsely populated areas may even further lose on this competition. So we see also that the gaps have been widening. So the gaps are not stable, they are very dynamic, and very often they face this downward spiral that if you are losing in this race, you are going to lose even more if not the proper policy measures are introduced, again respecting the territorial specificities. But there are some solutions. And there are measures that also in our projects and ESPON program we are discussing with policymakers that, and sometimes these measures are counterfactual, because you can say, okay, we have, for instance, the so-called inner peripheries. This is a very interesting and colorful term, meaning that there are certain areas across Europe that are not just remote or peripheral, but they are within the specific countries. But because the access to the services of general interest is lower than in case of the surrounding territories, they already fall into the, well, again, a spiral, downward spiral of so-called inner peripheries. So an interesting measure is how then to attract professionals. Because, of course, there is a right to stay, but on the other hand, we can't prevent the people from moving. We live still in democratic countries, so we can't just, say to them, no, you are not supposed to leave. But we had a lot of showcases we discussed with policymakers that actually, in order to anchor the population in specific area, it's not only the matter of providing them with the proper quality of services, but also attracting professionals to perform these services. And, for instance, there could be subsidies that local authorities may offer to those professionals to come to the so-called inner peripheries areas and thrive there, because someone needs to provide the services. So, another very interesting area of our expertise is the certain new geographical patterns that emerge. We call them new geographies. And here is so-called interface territories. So, as you are well aware of, we have a certain classification of functional areas. We have mountainous areas, islands, peripheral areas, rural areas, and so on. But also, we see that the reality goes even further. This is an example of interface territories, so territories that connect the mountains with the lowlands, and they still follow the functional logic because there are many flows, there are many interrelations between the aforesaid types of territories, and they spread even beyond the functional urban areas. So our quite daring question is, shouldn't they be also a matter of policy attention? We say yes, because this is what is going on in reality in Europe. These areas form transport gateways, they are mobility funnels, so they are channeling the flows between the mountains and the lowlands. They have specific challenges, they have specific roles in terms of, for instance, water supply, hazard prevention, tourism, energy production, but there are no specific governance patterns for these territories. So then, ergo, we need to think about them in terms of how to govern these territories for the coherent development. Again, one more manifestation why we need a territorial approach to development to respect what's going on, in fact, in European space. And then also another quite interesting fact. What we should be attentive to is not just the static snapshot, but dynamic development. We call it understanding development trajectories, where, for instance, in case of some mountainous areas, and this is one of our latest projects, Espon Karpat, as we are in Poland, and some part of Poland actually is coherent with this concept of Carpathian mountainous region, we see that even those, we would say, theoretically well-defined territories face disparities, face gaps, face divides, and they need common vision and common governance structures. So what we do, we offer scenarios, and through scenario thinking, sometimes with elements of foresight, we are able then to involve decision makers, NGOs, civil society in discussion on the common future. So I would say we are a unique program, I dare say. You see there are a lot of organizations that bear similar names, similar acronyms, and we are often mistaken for Epson, but we don't do the printers. We don't do the office supplies. We are, again, a unique Interact program, delivering high-quality research on demand very often of the local and regional and national and European authorities. So in case you are interested, and hopefully you are, please join the ESPON community. ESPON.eu is the name of the program, not epson.com, but ESPON.eu, and we'll be really happy to having you there to discuss what ESPON can do for you in the coming years. So many thanks once again. Dziękuję bardzo za zaproszenie.
Thank you very much for invitation.
It has been inspirational enough for you. Again, thank you.
Thanks, Victor, also for commercial, of course, of ESPON, not Epson, of the initiative. We will come back, of course, in the panel for to some of your thoughts and to some of the challenges that you presented to us. My name is Michał Olszewski. I have the pleasure to be moderator of this panel. But before we go back to the panel, I have some slides just to share some my thoughts about means which we use to cope the challenges mentioned by Victor in the presentation. First of all, I want to go with one sentence. Maybe some of you remember this sentence. I remember it very well. I was those times when somebody said it, a co-worker of Małgorzata Wierzbicka in the ministry. That's the sentence said by José Manuel Barroso in December 2005, after finalizing the European multi-annual budget in 2005 for perspective 2007-2013. We were already, as a country, a member of European Union, and we thought then that it was one of the most tragic negotiations of European multi-annual budget for European Union. But as you probably know, after this multi-annual program, this multi-annual perspective in European Union, many challenges came to the ground. Some of them was coped by the next multi-annual perspectives. Some of them make these instruments offered by the cohesion policy, including more effective and more flexible to us, to beneficiaries, which usually implement the projects offered from the Union, European Union means, European Union policy. Those times in 2005 and in perspective 2007-2013, the cohesion policy was usually made in such a way. It was like the clash of two kind of approaches, bottom down and bottom up with the responses to the challenges. This model was used in 2007-2013 perspective as a basic model of planning, of programming instruments. But, and this, let's say, challenges was redesigned on programs, responses redesigned on the projects. And it was how this, let's say, programs cohesion policy was working. But after that, as already mentioned, came more and more challenges ahead next programming periods, 2014, 2020, and now 2021, 2027, such as global warming, financial crisis, post-COVID time, war in Ukraine, energy crisis, immigration crises, begin of European Commission mandate. Of course, it's not a crisis, but it's a challenge. Challenge is a challenge for us because we can reshape, let's say now with the new composition of European Commission, the next programming period, which will be announced this year as an assumption for a new programming period. Global trade, so relation of European Union against China and US. Donald Trump, also as a challenge for us nowadays. And as I said, new programming period as a challenge which we have ahead, as a challenge which for us is also an occasion to review the model of programming, review the model of the means which we use for implementing cohesion policy instruments. And social transformation, sorry, I forgot. And in this model, which we have after 2007, 2013 programming periods, because that's actually, I'm approaching to the topic of the panel, having in mind subsidiarity rule, which is one of the basic rules of cohesion policy, European Commission offered to us territorial agenda which make many instruments more adaptive, let's say, to those areas such like urban functional areas, rural functional areas, green agenda and digital agenda, which is implemented programming period after programming period. Those instruments, which I now put on the slides, are the basic instruments mentioned in territorial agenda, which was a basic for next programming period after 2013. And of course, the means which we use from 2013 in our, let's say, basic work as a beneficiary, also as a managing institution, managing authorities, it's the instrument of ITI for urban area, CLLD, we will go deeper with these instruments after, for rural areas, cross-border cooperation, but generally speaking, Interreg initiative as an initiative addressed for functional areas which are close to the border, and other territorial instruments implemented in this programming period very recently. So maybe it's not enough time now to discuss this instrument actually, but for many complexes problems which is out of rural and urban instruments, this OTI instrument is also available. And basic rule is to react basing on subsidiarity rule, to adapt those programs as flexible as possible. So to take into account this topic which was mentioned by Victor in the presentation, that in many cases, the problems or the challenges are going out of the region, out of the country, out of the border. And we have to address in several cases, we have to address with specific means to the problems which are specific in the area, in the metropolitan areas, in the rural areas, in cross-border areas, in areas where we need more flexible reaction. So this model, which was a basic model, was converted somehow from the clash of two point of view, of two approaches, to the collaboration, to the, let's say, complexity of the program, which mix bottom-up and bottom-down approach. Those are actually the challenges which, in my opinion, are typically like addressed in local areas, which comes from the global perspective, from the global challenges, but that should be redesigned by the local actions at local level as possible. What's next? That will be the subject of the panel. Before we go to the panel, I want to offer you some Menti survey. So if I may ask now to switch the slide to Menti survey. If you already log into Menti, please come back. We will show now the short instruction how to get to the Menti. If I may ask the slide. That will be also a test of our digital ability to react. May we? Sorry, because I missed 2 slides, so that's the reason why we have such a shift of the time. So that's the instruction. So please use this QR code just to install the Menti. And now I will address the first question. This tool will be useful 2 times more so you can also react after with the Menti survey. And now that's very warm-up question to you, which comes from to the Menti. Oh, many people are logged in. Thanks. Okay, so the question is, which specific territorial instruments are your closest one? So which instrument you are using mostly in your daily work? Please vote. Oh, thanks. Thanks for ITI. It's going. Let's give it time. It's a few minutes. Okay, I believe we can close the reaction. So more than half of the audience represent metropolitan area. I'm very happy from this fact. But as you can see, there are also representatives who are using CLLD or supra-regional program or Interreg, which shows that we have, let's say, good audience for today's discussion about many instruments which are used for territorial dimension of cohesion policy. Now let me introduce the first set of the panel, because we divided today discussion on the territorial dimension into two panels. The first one will be bottom-up panel, so how this territorial dimension instruments looks from the eagle eye point of view. So please welcome on stage Jens Menneke from Lower Saxony Ministry for Federal and European Affairs and Regional Development. Jens. Wolfgang Münch, Deputy Head of Unit for Smart and Sustainable Growth from DG REGIO, European Commission. Agnès Reiner, Deputy General Director of National Agency for Territorial Cohesion, France. Nuno Romao, pronounce it well, or? Okay, thanks. Director of Regional Policy Unit, Cohesion and Development Agency, Portugal. Last but not least, Małgorzata Wierzbicka, Małgorzata Wierzbicka, Director of Department of Supra-Regional Programs, Ministry of Development Funds and Regional Policy, Poland. So now you can guess who voted for a supra-regional program in the survey. Okay, so let me switch here. If I may start with the question to European Commission, Wolfgang, because that's usually we start any panel with first reaction from, let's say, bottom up, the bottomest part of the discussion. And you are first on this list. When we discussed before the panel a few days ago, you mentioned that new financial assumption for the new financial perspective will be announced by the European Commission probably in upcoming months. I believe there is a huge discussion in the European Commission on how to reshape the common budget, what will be the role of the cohesion fund. But reacting to what we heard from Wiktor Szydarowski, how you feel, what will be the main challenges of this financial perspective for the next year? I mean, the global challenges that should be reshaped on the new programming period, on especially cohesion policy.
Well, that's a question. Thank you. Well, we heard in the last, yesterday we heard a lot about it already. I mean, we are facing, how should I say, multiple crises, multiple challenges. We have the competitiveness, which is declining. We have the security challenge. We have the climate change, which doesn't go away. Just look at Wrocław. We also have environmental challenges. There are areas where there's no water. And there's always the debate of structural versus crisis response. And as we heard this morning, cohesion policy was also good at crisis response, but the real purpose of cohesion is a structural intervention, and structural interventions need time. You need time to build a road or rail. The other part is what cohesion does, and if you asked me what cohesion does apart from building things and supporting schools, and it does build capacity. And it follows subsidiarity. And if I look at which authority is responsible for the investments, which level of what we do, 50 to 80% of the investments, depending on member states, how member states are organized, are on a regional, on a city or communal level. There you take the decisions. The decision to energy renovate a building, for example. The decision whether an SME can build a production hall. So what is needed is, and if you look into the subsidiarity textbooks, you put the resources where the decision power is. And there we have the challenge, since we need to change. There is a new geopolitical situation, as you know. There is a new geo-economic situation. We are not trading anymore with the cheapest in the world, but we are looking at strategic sectors. We're looking at having an industrial policy. So we are looking for transformative investments. Investments which really change the situation on the ground. That's what we do, but I think we need to be more transformative than in the past. When I look now at the 50 to 80% of the investments, particularly those which are very close to the lowest administration level, cities, communes, they often face challenges. They are delayed, sometimes even when decisions are taken at a different level in terms of financing, but they are depending crucially on local actions, like giving a building permit in time. They are sometimes ineffective and coming too late. So for me, the biggest challenge which we are facing is capacity.
But you mean capacity of this local level or the capacity of the system as such?
In principle, both, but most of the investments get delayed because of the local capacities which are missing.
Okay, in the whole chain.
In the whole chain, because if you, for example, there was one case, one country programmed out money for water infrastructure in the middle of a drought. Well, permanent drought, if you want. Why? The reason was that the local authorities, which were responsible for water supply and water infrastructure, were not able to agree to get the project, to plan the project, to implement the project. And this is something where we need to build capacity. The other part, capacity, is civil society. Being transformative means also we will have to make choices, and sometimes transformation also will be very challenging. And this needs agreement, because otherwise you create discontent. If your civil society is not there, then you will have pockets of people which didn't feel involved, which disagree, which hit the streets if they are organized, or just vote for extremist parties which are to protest.
Yeah, we have such cases in Europe.
There are some cases of that, yes.
But the question, because as we discussed, I mentioned to you that all of those challenges and regarding capacity, what are your reflections? How this territorial dimension made a change regarding what you said about this capacity, is it from your perspective useful approach which was used in the past programming period and now? Does it change something in the system to react to those challenges at local level? What's your reflection about it?
Well, I think if you now look at ITIs, for example, CLLDs, I mean, we of course have a mixed picture there, but I think it's overall very, very positive. Because what ITIs did was giving cities a certain decision power and a certain planning capacity. And it worked mostly very well. For CLLDs, I mean, again, it's depending from which starting point you come from. If your civil society is not really well organized, then you do very simple projects. But if it starts to get organized, the projects can become complex, more complex. And then of course, and I think this is the big success story which we have. The other part is cooperation. Interreg, for example, it's another workshop, is a very useful tool by linking people and regions, cities, territories, and in order to do things together. So this is something you can also talk about the I3 instrument, which is basically linking enterprises over territories. So this is something which I think is immensely positive.
So it's worth to invest more in this, let's say, approach, you think, of course.
It is worth, from my perspective, it is worth more.
Only asking about
other people will, with a higher pay grade, they will then come to the conclusions whether it's worth it. No, of course, I think we should really look in particular on this capacity building aspect and target this much more than we did in the past.
We move now from European Commission perspective to the national one. Agnès, France is the country who decentralized a lot. We are all the witness of how cohesion policy is decentralizing, but at the same time, France also decentralized a lot of the power to the regions, not only in cohesion policy, as I understood from our talks before. So what are, let's say, the effects of this decentralization? Because I suppose you are measuring also as an agency what are effectiveness of the policy decentralized to the regional level, and how the cohesion policy helped you to make this decentralization effective?
Well, effectively, we decentralized a lot. In 2014, we decided to give to the regions the management of the European funds. So I'll talk first of this organization of European funds in France, how we did this transformation. Second point, how we implement our own cohesion policy in France and how they're linked. So first, in 2014, so we gave to the regions the major part of the management of cohesion funds, of the three funds, ERDF, ESF+, and JTF. And for these three funds, about 68% are managed by the regions and the rest by the states. So it's a share management. And coordination is kept by the state and, as a matter of fact, by the National Agency for Territorial Cohesion, ANCT, which I represent today. And in the coordination, we coordinate the respect of the partnership agreement, which is the framework of this European cohesion policy in France. And of course, in the regional programs, the programs that the regions, the 18 regions of France, in using European funds, they use all these instruments that you described. They use
ITI, CLLD,
exactly.
Interact.
All these are used.
My question is, do you incentivize somehow regional authorities or this obligatory to use those instruments into the program? Okay.
No, they're very
that's the choice of the region if they choose? Okay.
Absolutely. It's really a decentralized competence.
Okay. And there are some success stories that you might share of the use of the ITI on CLD in France that you know from your daily work?
There are many. I don't have an example in head, but there are many successes. But they are used differently from a region to another.
Okay.
And this, so the results are very different. But of course, there are many successes from these instruments. The thing is that they are numerous, and maybe they give us a feeling of complexity, and maybe that a big number of instruments. And as we also have French instruments, French policies, all these instruments, European ones, French ones, and French on different levels, regional, national, local. All this gives a complex landscape, and certainly the simplification of this landscape would be a necessity in order to enable local authorities who really need this help to take this help and to know how to pick the ones. So we really think that a simplification is necessary to give more efficiency to these different policies.
If I may go deeper to one topic, because France is also an example of the country who is offering at the same time the cohesion policy instruments, which are, as you said, coordinated by the one partnership agreement by your agency or in help of your agency, but also is offering many state instruments to the cities, to regions. How you coordinate, how you make those instruments to not to overlap, to make it efficient?
That's the difficult point.
Okay, that's I'm asking.
Yes, you're right. We have, it's what I called just before the way we implement our own policy, cohesion policy. So we have three levels: regional, national, local. Regional, because in 2014 we gave the competence of regional, of territorial and development planning to the regions. Okay. So they have they manage this competence with schemes, plans in strategic areas. And there's also contracts, planned contracts between the French state, the state, and the regions, which are very the base of their policy, cohesion policy, decided by them. It's the regional part. Then you have the national part of this cohesion policy, and it's ANCT, created in 2020. And the major way of implementing this policy is to deploy what we call national programs, targeting cities, medium-sized, small villages, or former industrialized territories or mountain territories. So territories which face difficulties, constraints. It can be geographical, economical, social, demographic, etc. And we deploy programs to help them. I'll give just an example. We have the first one is called Action Cœur de Ville, Heart of Town Action, and it is aimed to help medium-sized towns to revitalize their centers with shops, with in helping housing, with soft mobility, etc. And so we, ANCT, we provide engineering to these cities to help them.
One interesting question maybe for the audience also, because in many cases European Commission, when it's designing this partnership agreement or is negotiating this partnership agreement, is picking the goals which might be co-financed, might be used by the regions, and what is not covered. If you offer your national support, do you look on the partnership and, for example, do you focus on those who are not financed by cohesion policy, or how you choose the instruments? Because you mentioned about this revitalization, about the commercial support, or also the topic regarding housing, which sometimes are not covered by European funds. That doesn't matter in designing this, let's say, national instruments in your case?
I would say it's not institutional.
Okay.
The link between both
instruments.
The goals are the same,
okay.
Because we, of course, the OS of the big issues of European cohesion policy are the same in France. Mm-hmm. So I would say, in fact, the link is significant. Mm-hmm. But it is not really thought, and it's not really decided, because regions decide their own policy, and the state decides also his policy. Has in addition, but it's not quite linked in texts or it's certainly a point of improvement to build a line between the big issues mm-hmm. and declined from the different level. It would be certainly more effective.
Okay, thanks. We are moving now to Portugal. Nuno, you have also very specific, let's say, your experiences about using this territorial dimension instruments. You also have some supra-regional instruments or approach in the case of water shortage problem in Portugal. What's your actually experiences from using this territorial approach of ERDF, ESF in Portugal?
Well, thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here and share the Portuguese experience in territorial approach and specifically in ITIs. I vote for ITI.
Thanks.
But, I represent a national body responsible for the coordination of the funds of cohesion policy and also responsible for the regional development. So we have this dual approach. I must start it by highlight one thing that my colleague on the left and you on the slide tend to link ITI with urban or sustainable urban development and CLLDs with rural. Well, this is not true because we have now in Portugal ITIs in the policy, in the specific objective 5.2 mm-hmm. for non-urban areas, mm-hmm. and in the previous period we have CLD in the three strands, mm-hmm. rural, coastal, and urban. Mm-hmm. Both, the three of them financed by ERDF and ESF. Mm-hmm. We abandoned this mm-hmm. approach mm-hmm. because we found from the evaluations during the process and talking with all the stakeholders, both from LEGs, the local action groups, managing authorities and intermunicipal communities. In Portugal, intermunicipal communities are the entities responsible for the most important ITI mm-hmm. That absorbs about 1/3 of the allocation of regional program. Mm-hmm. So, but this is a link that is very, very, very often made in several events and meetings. But going directly to your question, well, we must clarify that Portugal is a unitary country. Mm-hmm. So we have just two levels of political or administrative, the central government and municipalities. So we have a great gap between these two levels, decision and implementation. And we need to find some some scale for some competencies of municipalities and for some sectors. For instance, that's why the most important ITI is a contract between the central government and all intermunicipal communities organized by NUTS Level 3, and it meets the competencies of the municipalities: education, schools, health centers, water, waste or urban waste, and it covers all the territory. So we have an ITI that covered metropolitan areas as Lisbon and Oporto, transition areas in the hinterland of metropolitan areas, but also rural areas with middle or small cities. And this is the most important ITI. Then we identify that there are some problems, some specific problems in some territories. And we innovate in this 21-27 period with thematic ITIs. And these ITIs are in the specific objective 5.2. And we have...
How are you choosing those subjects of this thematic ITI?
It
was your analysis?
It depends. One of them in the central region of Portugal is for a set of municipalities from different from different NUTS Level 3 face the problem of fires in 2017 and 2019, and we have to rehabilitate all of this area and economically also. But one of the most important, because it's supra-regional, as you told, is one dedicated to water and landscape ecosystems. It is in the border of Algarve and Alentejo, that are the two regions, two different programs, and the regional coordination commissions from Algarve and Alentejo understand and found that there are specific programs because it is one of the territories most affected by droughts and water scarcity. So they found this problem, and they worked with the local action groups also, from the leader approach, the EARDF, some associations, environmental associations, and other groups, and 17 municipalities. And that's why this ITI has become, we have great expectations of this, because it's the first ITI we have covering parts of two different regions and financed by two different regional programs. This is an agreement between these two regions and the managing authorities of these two regional programs. And it was, as I told, a bottom-up approach, typically a bottom-up approach, because the challenges, the problems, the priorities were identified by both regional and local entities. And to confirm this, I must read just a small paragraph from the strategy that tells something like this. This ITI, water and landscape ecosystems, came from a cooperative perspective between territories, where there are no borders, no administrative and bureaucratic limits, with the aim of making an approach in order to respond directly to the problems of communities, companies and other organizations working toward a sustainable and innovative development in these territories. So this shows the process, the governance process, and the model. The model then it's explained in the strategy, in the action plan.
Yeah, it looks like a great idea, because usually, as you said at the beginning, there is very short abbreviation from urban to ITI and from CLLD to rural areas. I provoked a bit to this discussion because this is very unfair, because those instruments might be used in many areas, also mixed areas. So I represent Warsaw agglomeration, which is composed for 2/3 of our partners are rural. So it's very good idea to have this ITI thematically address to both areas, rural, urban, which actually solve one of the problem in the area. I want to move now to Małgorzata, because Poland has also one unusual program, which is addressed to 5 regions from 2007. What was the reason to make this program such big for 5 regions? It's one of the biggest, I believe, supra-regional program in European Union. But what's also your experiences from having, and how you deal with this clash from bottom-up and bottom-down approach? So how you collaborate, how you elaborate the scope of the program, and what's your, let's say, experiences of collaboration with regional authorities and having these instruments effective?
Yes, a super-regional program that covered the regions, eastern part of Poland regions, with similar problems, and that's why it was the idea to build such a program, just to give the additional development impulse. To assist them to solve the main problems of these regions, because all of them, they have their own regional programs, and additionally we built a program that is managed on a central level by our ministry, but it is built basing on their needs. So when we create such a program, and now we have the 3rd edition of this program, we ask what are the problems, the main problems of the regions from their perspective, and we also see it from the central perspective. And in the program, we can select particular area to strengthen them. And some of this area needs the participation of the central entities. When we are talking about the transport accessibility and we build the railway accessibility, we can connect all these entities, the regional and the central, because in Poland the railway is managed by the national level. Also, when we, in the 1st edition, for example, we built the broadband network in the whole eastern part of Poland, because these areas, they had very poor accessibility.
Coverage,
yes, to internet. And we also wanted to show the touristic value of this area. We built the very unique instrument like a bicycle trail that is going through all these regions. It's about 2,000 kilometers. So
I suppose this is the most known project which was made by the program. Many of my friends, they use this path because it's very fantastic. It goes through many landscape. My question is about the geopolitical, let's say, meaning of this program, because we know in this room that we have war in Ukraine. 2 of the regions are at the border with Ukraine. Does war in Ukraine change something in your approach to this program?
Yes. First of all, these are the poorest region, less developed region, and now we are facing additional problem, as you said, the war. So. So we try to strengthen this region to build their capacity and to build their resilience to these phenomena, and to assist them in this present situation. They are a bit different when we look at the border with Ukraine and when we look at the border with aggression countries like Russia and Belarus. There are a bit different problems, so we are trying to support entrepreneurs to change their business
especially
models.
Belarus
Yes.
and Russian border,
Yes,
where they suffered a lot. Yeah?
Yes, they suffered a lot, so we're trying to assist them to change the business models, to find another markets for the activities. We are also trying to support the self-governments on this area, how to behave in the present situations. So I think this program gives them additional assistance in the present situation.
Yeah, so it's typically multi-level governance instrument, which is mentioned in territorial agenda. So keep my finger crossed for the effect of the project, because it's the long road ahead, actually, with this region and with the current situation. Now we are going down to the region. Jens, you're representing Lower Saxony, which is the region which is a bit rich, but a bit also with the problem, transformative problem, which is now ongoing with the automotive companies also. But it's, I believe, Lower Saxony is not only Hanover and Wolfsburg, but also many other cities. What's your experiences from implementing instruments of the territorial agenda in Lower Saxony?
Yes, let me come from the theoretical level to complexity of life. Life in administration, that's something different.
Might be fruitful for discussion.
Yes.
Go ahead.
In the times we live now, EU integration, I think, is more necessary than ever. Multiple challenges, multiple transformation processes. And cohesion and regions, for me, are the core of the European integration process. And territorial instruments are the best tools to push the European integration. It's a tool which is seen at the ground, which is based on partnership principle and participation, and a tool which is based on a local strategical process. Let me tell something about Lower Saxony. You mentioned size and inhabitants is comparable to Belgium or Austria. I have a little bit more than 1 billion euro in the funding period. We have coastal areas, we have rural agricultural areas, we have hilly areas, and we have areas with VW, steel production. And if you go 50 kilometers south, if there is a bus, maybe you reach the regions, and then if you want to go to the doctor from the very rural area to the next city, if you are happy and lucky, there is a bus to bring you there. That's the difference in Lower Saxony. On NUTS 2 level, we have 3 regions as more developed regions, and 1 region as a region in transition. We have a multi-fund approach from the regional fund and the social fund. And LEADER from the rural fund, we covered all over Lower Saxony for all rural areas for several funding periods. So we have many experience with LEADER, but we had no experience with ITIs.
Okay.
So we started in this funding period, additionally, 2 territorial integrated strategy instruments on other or higher regional levels, not at the rural level, 1 for medium-sized cities and 1 for collaboration for 2 or more districts. So we covered all regional levels in Lower Saxony with bottom-up processes.
With the instruments, yeah.
Following the financial restrictions, now I come to the technical and to the complexity. Following the financial restrictions, we want to spend more than the 15% from the political goal, Europe close to citizens. We spent a little bit more than 20 or 25% for these processes. So we have to address 4 political goals, not only 1. And we have to address felt hundreds of specific targets and hundreds of indicators to administrate. You can think how complex it to administrate something like
You see the reaction. It's not only your problem.
And if you imagine 2 funds, 2 kinds of regions, 4 political goals, uncountable specific targets, it's incredible to admit. The local groups are involved in developing of and be responsible for the selection of projects. So we get customized projects from the regions for the multiple crises. It's very complex, but we did it, and I think we would do it again if we have the chance. It took a long time to implement new governance structures and to explain the local people what is needed regarding to the partnership principle, regarding to participation and bottom-up processes, and to fulfill all the regulations we get. It's not easy, but therefore we are funding regional management bodies close to these ITIs, and you need strong ambassadors to push this process. That doesn't run alone. You have to have ambassadors. Today, most of the ITIs accept the mechanism, accept the rules, I hope. And in a few months, I think they will love it and never missing it. But it took a long time to get at the stadium. Now we get creative ideas and exciting and well-defined projects customized on the regional needs, and that is the most important thing for us, to reach the common European targets and objectives. So that's the way we did.
Thanks. We will address one opportunity to have a question now to our panelists. But before I ask you, you might now prepare the question, 1 to 3 question to the panelists. I have a last question to you, just to sum up this panel. What is 1 or 2 your personal expectation of territorial dimension for the future? Małgorzata. Yeah. Unexpectedly.
Yes, I won't be very original if I say that the territorial dimension instrument needs flexibility.
Flexibility.
Flexibility is...
Okay, we might end with flexibility. Okay, Nuno.
Yes, don't
you might
the flexibility that we already have in...
But your flexibility, European Commission flexibility, where this flexibility should be offered?
We are very comfortable with regulation.
Okay.
European regulation for the ITIs, because it is flexible enough to deal with different configurations in different countries. Okay. Obviously, there is a multi-level governance process in each country, because each country is different from another. But one expectation that I think it won't be for real, it's to integrate the rural development in the cohesion policy. As Jan told in the previous panel, it will be very important because health, education, water, social care, the rural development is also this, and it's not also the agriculture. Thank you.
Wolfgang, would you merge rural policy into cohesion policy as is addressed? Or you may react only by the first question, so what's your expectation?
If you ask me as personally,
yeah, only.
Cohesion policy is doing rural development. There's another fund which is largely doing agricultural development, but the rural development is done by cohesion. That's de facto like it. We are building the schools, we are providing, the basic public services, we do the digitalization, and the rural fund usually, depending on the country, of course, is a bit less pronounced on these.
Thanks. Agnès, what's the French expectation from territorial dimension?
I would say less instruments, but more articulated with one with another, and targeting the local authorities that really need them.
So let's say simplicity of the instrument.
Exactly, simplification.
Yeah, thank you. Jens, you already addressed some before, but you now might sum up. Or
yes, the time frame is very challenging to implement territorial instruments, and simplification is urgently needed for territorial instruments. lighten the administrative burdens, and maybe one or two more concrete things, let me say. Because we have additional efforts to normal funding in territorial instruments, we need benefits and simplification, higher intervention rates, and easing up the burden for cross-funding and cross-regional funding. We have one ITI, it's one region use the regional fund and the social fund, and is located one part in a more developed region and one part in a region of transition. It's horrible to administrate this. We have to ease it up. And programming in only one political goal and not in many political goals. We will fulfill all the objectives the cohesion policy has to address, but programming in only one political goal and only in few specific targets. That will help very much us at the administration level and at the ground to use the ITIs.
Thanks. I believe that you actually address not only, let's say, voice from Lower Saxony, but from many regions and countries. Those are actually the challenges which we cope all together. Now there is the floor for 1-2 questions to the panelists. If somebody wants now to maybe address something. If not, we will move forward. So don't be afraid. It will be also space for the discussion with the audience later on. No one. No brave one. Ah, there is one. Okay. Please, if we may.
Hello, I'm Bianca Fargo from the EIB group. I have a question about what is it really needed for, let's say, cities, urban areas, what kind of support to really plan more integrated investments. So instead of thinking, okay, I will use ESF Plus for this and ERDF for this and so on, what would you need to be able to really plan according to what your sustainable urban development program is? You have a program for 5-10 years, and you need to have an investment plan for that. How can the EU funding from cohesion funds help in that regard? Thank you.
Oh, so it's like all the impact. Wolfgang, maybe you want to react for it?
We have one example, which is the JTF, which is an integrated instrument, a bit like Lower Saxony is programming, but then the rules are only the JTF rules. Thus, there's only one reporting scheme, and yeah. So that could be something to reflect for the future, to have a bit more integrated instruments as such. The current Commission thinking is as well that we should reduce the number of funding instruments and with that also the number of rules and different rules. So that should hopefully address some of the issues.
So thanks for this reaction. I want to thank for our panelists, so please give them applause for a very fruitful discussion, this bottom-up approach. Now we move to Menti once again. That's one very might be unexpected survey for you, but if you are ready, we can go ahead because I believe you already installed. Okay, you will log in. The unexpected question will be about your multi-annual reflection on which European Commissioner for Regional Policy was the best one. I excluded especially, the last one, so Ferreira, Nuno, sorry for that. You cannot vote it because it's too recent. I decided that might be too recent time to assess. But if you might vote now, it was the best. Michel Barnier, Danuta Hübner, Johannes Hahn, or Corina Cretu. Let's see who will win this unusual competition. I know that might be unfair, made it here in Kraków, as you see on the slide, but I will explain later on one thing. Oh, I think everybody voted. Oh no, Corina Cretu now is going up, 5 votes. Okay, so it's a funny thing because I asked AI, I address it by the AI, this question. And the answer was Michel Barnier and Danuta Hübner at one's level. So I was very curious, what's your opinion? Because AI think that Danuta Hübner and Michel Barnier was, from this composition of 4 European Commissioner, the best one in the recent time. Okay, but after the survey, we are going to the last set of our panelists, last but not least, of course. Artur Szymczyk, President of the Management Board of Lublin Metropolitan Area Association, so representative of ITI, Artur. Thomas Kiewit, Director of Planning, Verband Region Stuttgart, I have on the slides. Also ITI from Germany. So as you see, we have 1 ITI from federal state, 1 from central state. Primoz Kroflic, Manager of Local Action Group Diversity of the Countryside, Slovenia. And František Kubeš, Head of Department for Strategic Development and Cooperation, City of Brno, also ITI. We left 1 seat empty. Maybe some of you know the very old Polish tradition on the Christmas Eve. We also leave 1 for an unexpected guest, so that's for an unexpected guest. But hope would not come because we are a bit stressed by time. So it's better to leave it as it is with 4 panelists. I want to address my first question in Polish. So if you will use translation, please take your headset. Forgot to mention. My first question will be to Artur Szymczyk. And I switch to Polish now. Artur, ZIT-y, jak to się po polsku mówi, czy ITI?
ITIs
14-20.
We're already in the perspective 2013-2020. However, something unexpected happened in our Polish cities because the opportunity to use ITIs proved to be an opportunity for collaboration. So what is the side effect of the fact that we started programming instruments at local levels? So what have been your experiences here?
Z sąsiadami.
Dzień dobry Państwu. Po pierwsze chciałem serdecznie podziękować za zaproszenie i za zauważenia naszego regionu polskiego.
Thank you very much for seeing our region of Eastern Poland.
Dodatkowy benefit, tylko tak naprawdę te środki nam
And it's not actually some additional benefit. We actually need these funds to catch up with others. So thank you again for this possibility of being here with you and presenting to you the situation of Eastern Poland. Now, we need to go back in time because history determines us. When it comes to our region, the Lubelskie region, we were under Russian rule during the partitions. Okay, we need to explain it to our foreign guests that we're talking about 19th century history in Poland right now. Okay, so this program actually made us change the situation somehow. Lublin was seen as a big city that wished to take up all the other smaller villages around it. Are you referring to this Russian imperialism here? Yeah, maybe there was something similar to it when it comes to mentality. Yeah, I just wanted to put a name to it. Yes, in the past, everybody wanted to work according to silos, but here we managed to get through it. So yes, we managed to reach some agreement. It wasn't easy, of course, because these smaller villages and cities had this impression that there was this bigger entity that wanted to exploit them. But because of the years of collaboration, you know, everybody realized that we wanted to improve our transportation and mobility in our region, that we were able to introduce circular economy solutions. So for us, that was a unique experience, despite the fact that at the beginning we used this mechanism only just to use the money and to use it for our goals. But then it turned out that it wasn't just the money. We just managed to build relationships. Yes, what you've said is extremely important. I believe that, you know, all the Polish cities that had a chance to use ITI, perhaps they had similar situations. And they had the same in their minds. Okay, how has ITI helped you in the process of building partnerships? Well, to put it simply, we became motivated to actually use it. Without collaboration, we wouldn't have gotten the money. As I've said at the beginning, it wasn't easy, because initially we even had to change the director of ITI. Let me quote the director from back then. He said the following: "Oh, we're going to exploit these communes politically." But then it turned out that no, the approach has to be different, that you need to build relations. And that's why we changed the director and we started collaboration. We, as the Lublin city, wanted to understand our partners. We very often had to take a step back to show others that we were after this common good. So what's the situation right now? Okay, in the past, we did it as part of cooperation. Now we had to create an association. And as part of association, everybody had to contribute. In the past, it was the city that administered everything. But now... Okay, I'm not going to complain right now, but now we have 26 communes in part of our association, and there are 2 more who want to join us, which shows that we are simply credible. Okay, I believe that you also wanted to mention challenges. Yes, but maybe I'll do it later so that I don't stick to the mic throughout all the time. Okay, so I'm sure that you see this change of perspective when you have this bottom-up approach and then up-bottom approach. Now let's move on to Stuttgart.
You have also a very specific situation because Stuttgart is actually now in industrial transformation time. And the question is how this territorial agenda, how those instruments such like ITI, CLD help you to cope this, let's say, industrial transformation process, how you cooperate with your neighbors, how you cooperate with regions to shape the instrument.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I really can add to what we just learned from Lublin, that it's always a bit tricky if you have cities cooperating with the hinterland. Mm-hmm. This is always challenging. Mm-hmm. And for those who have been attending the plenary session in the morning, where one of the speakers referred to the biotech company in Mainz and showed some surprise, how could this happen in Mainz? this really describes the problem. Mainz is a city most have never heard of. But if you look on the map, it's 2 stops away from Frankfurt Rhein-Main Airport. It's really part of that big metropolitan area in the middle of Germany. So I think we have to think in functional urban areas. That's for some reason that during the Leipzig Charter process, we really put a strong focus on having a focus not just on the cities, but on the city regions. I think this goes back to the very ancient idea of the Greek polis, which is always the city, the urban core, plus the hinterland. So if you look at it in a global scale, we have maybe 5 big multi-million cities in Europe. It's Paris, it's maybe Berlin, it's Warsaw. But on a really top level, compared to cities in China, to mega cities in Asia, we have none of that. Most member states cannot muster as many people as we have there in cities. So we have to switch the focus to the functional urban area.
And how you deal with it now in Stuttgart? How is going, this functional area approach? Because you represent, let's say, this supra-local, let's say.
Stuttgart is quite far ahead when it comes to organizing the functional urban area, because we have our own parliament who takes political decision, and as also members that are directly elected from the people living in that region.
Okay.
So, and I think that in one kind or another, that's true for many metropolitan areas. They are organized. They have political procedures. They have elected officials. They have staff that can organize work. And as this parameter really represents the area of activity during people in everyday's life, when they commute, when they go for shopping, when they go for recreation or cultural shopping, that's all in the metropolitan area.
This metropolitan, let's say, functional administration is helping?
Yes, of course, because this is something where you have staff, where you have instruments, where you have
budget,
democratic legitimation. I come to the budget.
Okay, no budget.
Most of the problems, transportation, biodiversity, affordable housing, places for economic development, has to be organized in metropolitan areas. And of course we know that. And we are all experts in having strategic plans, having procedures, how to deliver answers for the big challenges we see. What we do not have is funding. So it's somewhat surprising when we are looking at the cohesion policy. Why do we not take the money and put it behind the plans that are already there, that are decided, that are discussed, they are following European standards? Why do we not use these plans and just make them come through? Because we have no lack in identifying or analyzing things. What we do need is that we get stuff done. And I think then this is especially true when we look at the challenges ahead. We have seen from Espon interesting slides on European level. And from that perspective, everything is true. But if we look at the challenge, we see how we keep those top performers competitive in the global scale. We need a different approach of thinking, because most of our big cities are in many regards dysfunctional. We have the affordable housing crisis. Our infrastructure is not sufficient. We cannot provide enough land. We have problems with digitalization. So it is not enough to support the areas that are below the average, but it's also important to keep those who really are responsible for the European Union staying competitive in a global scale. to really support them, that they can really take that role in the long-term, long perspective. And it's especially true coming from Stuttgart. We heard this from Lower Saxony as well. We are in many, Czech Republic, in many countries in Germany, we really rely on the automobile. And this sector is undergoing a really deep-going structural change, and we not know where we land. And when we are losing that significant key industry, we need no longer think about cohesion policy because we are all running out of money.
Okay. We are moving now from Germany to Slovenia, and from big region, industrial region, to Celje, if I pronounce it well, which is medium-sized city, surrounded by the rural areas. And you also, Primož, have your thoughts of how it looks in such, let's say, dominated by the rural communities area. So what's your experiences, especially of linking two funds? Because for rural areas, there are two available funds, which might be composed in one program. So what's your experiences in having this territorial approach made from two programming periods happen, and how you cope with challenges in Celje and the region?
Okay, thank you for the invitation and warm welcome here in Kraków. And it's really nice to see so many people in this event discussing about our common future. I'm going to introduce a little background of CLLD. Slovenia has 2 million of people, so it's like one.
It's like Stuttgart
city in Germany,
Stuttgart.
And we have 37 local action groups. Like local action group is from the leader principle. If you know it, it's from the beginning of 19th, when part of agricultural money was divided to rural areas to do some projects or some investments that are not connected to farming directly, or forestry or fishery or whatever is principally going on in rural areas. So it was going on, and in Slovenia we started with leader in 2007-2013 period, and then it was only agricultural fund, and then in 2014-20 we got this CLLD with 3 funds, so regional development, agriculture, and also fishery. Now, in the program period 2027, we only have 2 funds left, so regional and agricultural, because the fishery decided, and maritime decided it's not really good for them to be inside, basically because the area of the lake should be the same, and we don't have so much of fishery production, so they have now bigger lakes and almost the same rules, so they didn't profit much in the case of bureaucracy. And just a few dates, so you will understand what kind of projects and money we talk about. In Slovenia, we have, I think, 84 million euro for leader CLLD from both funds together. And for 37 local action groups, it's around 2 and something millions for the program period up to 2027. And it's about the same money we had in previous program period, and we managed to make more than 1,000 and few hundred projects. So average money in a project is around 40 or 50,000 euros. So we are talking really small local project, not the big one. And I had some points, so not to distract my mind too much. And what are local
I will come back to you also with the last question about the challenges. So
okay. And what are local action groups actually doing on the field in the local level? Our job is that we find people, we find ideas, and then help them prepare the project, and also then help them going through the project till they get the money. That's our advisory work service that we do. And we are trying to find people or organizations that are not yet included in projects, or not especially being in project. If you know some other programs like Interreg, there are almost these big players, almost all the time the same players. They are getting some new, but here we are trying to find others. Of course, we have municipalities that are included, and or some other, but every time, every program period, there are some new people coming, and we're trying to explain them what is this about. So these small projects are like some kind of startups for like they can jump to bigger project later if they find this is something for them. And now why I came here is just to present you what are the like a good practice in Slovenia on the national level about the regulation of LEADER CLLD.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
What do you elaborate in Slovenia as a good practice? Sorry? What do you elaborate as a good practice? Yeah.
Since the program 2014-2020, our ministries of agriculture and cohesion have this board of those who are included in LEADER CLLD. And we had a regulation, one regulation for all the free funds in the past period, but there were a lot of differences. So if you can imagine someone coming to a LAC and ask, what can I get in your strategy, what money, what project? We said, okay, if you are in the biggest town, you can get regional fund, but you can get agricultural fund. Then if you have this thematic scope, it's not in this fund, it's in others. So there were a lot of confusion for the beneficiaries, not to say for us, because someone was calling you and you were explaining, yes, and he said, oh, but I'm talking about other fund. Oh, then we have other regulations. So what happened is that in now this programming period, we have one regulation, and I would say 99% of the same things written inside for both funds. So what does it mean? It means that EU regulation is so flexible that if a member state wants, they can make really simply and common or union regulation for different sources of money. That I think is great, because now in Slovenia, now LECs are started with the calls for projects, and there's not a lot of this which fund. I mean, those who apply for a project almost doesn't have to know which fund he's going to be funded from. That's how it's simplified.
So now we prepared for study visits from many guys in the audience, because it's looked like a dream that your approach. We have to go now to Czech Republic. František, you manage a very important program for Brno neighborhood areas, but it's almost the same situation as in many cases. So the city, urban areas, two kind of the instruments, CLLD, ITI. How you cope with it in Brno?
Okay, thank you for this question. Thank you for inviting me. I have to say that we are talking about two different things. When we are talking about the city of Brno, we are obliged, or we have opportunity to use only ITI. Mm-hmm. But when we are talking about function urban area, so there is a mixture of these two instruments in territory, so ITI and CLLD. Mm-hmm. For us, it was really important from the very beginning when we were talking about methodology at the Ministry for Region Development to have all the important representatives in working groups and in steering committee. And steering committee, we have representative of CLLD, it means local action groups, but we have universities, NGO sector, innovative institutions, and of course other municipalities. In our case, we have a challenge with the enormous number of municipalities. So how actually to find representative of more than 160 or 70 municipalities, because otherwise you would need such a hall for each steering committee meeting. So it's informal structure. So in this regard, we have representatives of the biggest municipalities, so-called municipalities with extended power. But I would wish that for the future they would use the new mechanism that our government introduced last year, and that they can actually create some formal association on behalf of these areas for extended powers.
But it's covering like Brno and area.
It's covering Brno and area, functional urban area, but local action groups are in all territories. Okay. But you can't be part of CLLD if you are from a municipality having more than 25,000 inhabitants. Okay. That's why Brno is excluded.
Okay. The question is because you have also very good practice, which might be also very useful for many other countries, because you also have very good collaboration between ITIs. So you and guys, I suppose, from Olomouc, Praha, and many other cities. How is working? Is it like officially meetings or unofficially meetings? How are you working all together and elaborating maybe some lobby for better ITI instruments in the future?
Actually, it started maybe already 10 years ago, or even when we were talking about the cohesion policy 2014 plus. Mm-hmm. And our collaboration is informal. In this regard, we have actually every week on Friday.
Every week?
Every week online meeting.
Okay.
I don't have time to
attend
it regularly, but time to time I'm there, of course.
Okay. But it's voluntary.
Today,
so, but every
I preferred.
Okay, and every ITI is included.
All ITIs are there.
Alin. Okay.
We are discussing, of course, current challenges, but at the same time we are preparing our joint statements, positions for the future, what we already did last year. Mm-hmm. And within these ITIs, we have 2 mini teams for methodological and evaluation issues and for next programming period and dealing with managing authorities, because we are combining different funds and we are gaining allocation from different operational programs, which makes the system quite complex. But when we look at the challenges in functional urban areas, it's, I think, the only one option. It's the right option. And we are now, thanks to the Ministry of Regional Development, opportunity to get some technical assistance for having this informal cooperation funded within ITIs.
For the expertises or for,
Yes, exactly, and for PR and communication work as well. Right. So hopefully it will start very soon. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted to mention, it's not only about functional urban areas, it's about regions as well, so NUTS-free regions. And in this, on this level, there is a system of permanent conferences, so gatherings of important stakeholders that are dealing actually with region development, especially with cohesion policy. And there are, of course, ITIs and CLD representatives are members, and that can be a recommendation for you as well, because what we really missed in the past was a lack of opportunities to communicate and to share actually knowledge and opinions on things. So that helped. And back to this regional system, there is a national parliament conference that gathers 2-3 times a year, including chambers for CLLD, for ITIs, for regions. And that is actually the place where ministries with representatives from regions and local entities can discuss issues.
Okay, so again, great floor for discussing the many important issues.
For you, if you would like to introduce something like that.
I will address last question to you as we spoke before, but there will be the room for the questions for the audience. So be ready to raise some questions after the maybe 2 minutes of the reaction to sum up. Guys, we are representing actually the bottom-up approach. So and we have very good occasion now. We have representatives from European Commission, from national institutions, from regions. It's a very good occasion to address now what are our expectations for the future. What are the tips for the future? František, I will start with you. What's your 2 tips, your expectations? What should be the direction for territorial dimension for the future?
So I have more than 2 points, but I will say the most important.
Yeah, sorry.
The first one is actually to increase the share of territorial instruments in regulations, because
increase by scope, by money,
by money, because I think in terms of scope, at least in our case, we can really implement different projects, including hard ones and soft ones, and we can combine them, we can combine calls. But definitely that's important when we are talking about the challenges, energy efficiency and all this stuff.
So more money and?
And I would stress the administrative capacity, to give more
attention to
more, let's say, maybe more expertise for actually for developing such a sophisticated projects that are needed in territory. In terms of competitiveness, we are talking about research and development, energy and all this stuff. You can't find experts in 1 minute in our cities or in our
It was mentioned by Wolfgang Münch from European Commission about the administrative capacity, like in all chain from European Commission down to the ground.
I think it's really important. That's why I wanted to stress it.
Yeah, thanks. Primož, your 2 points, your 2 expectations?
I think that we should focus on this simplification and flexibility in the future.
Same as
we have simplification in our regulation and mentioned before, I will tell something about flexibility. I think that these local systems like CLLD or LRT and local action groups are much more flexible than the big programs. And we also have the chance to change the local strategy once a year, as long as we get the indicators.
Multi-annual,
yeah. And the most important thing for rural areas, because I work in rural areas, is that we should engage young people into trying to create the future rural areas for them, like participation in projects, capacity building for them, everything, because in 15, 20 years, they were going to live there, and they now need a chance to create a good place to live there. That's my
it's very
recommendation.
Yeah, it's very important. Thomas?
I would like to underline that it is important that people see what they get from EU's money. We are losing acceptance in each and every...
So understanding.
So just to make sure that the money the European Union does invest is a very important means for problem solving, and the EU is not a problem in itself, and we should make that clear.
Very important, yes. Thanks for underlining it. Artur, a twoje 2 punkty na przyszłość?
What about your 2 tips for the future? From my perspective, everything is good? Well, no. I would rather we keep talking about the same thing. So I would rather say we should start to listen to these grassroots voices. So even lower? No, we should be listened to. Because if you have different delineations to metropolitan areas, say in Poland, in the previous perspective, and versus now, someone is delineating them high above, so maybe they should trust us. If we want the EU to show where the funds are invested, it seems that we should be the tube that can show where the money comes from and what they do in these very, very basic needs of our inhabitants, of our population, because this is what the monies are for, so that we, our people, live better lives. And this is how our inhabitants could understand the cohesion policy. That was a general, but from Poland specifically, I would like to see Polish regulations, legal regulations, Polish metropolitan law to be much more efficient. So we can be jealous of our colleague who has got this tool simplified and the flexibility. Yes. Summing up, listening to you, I remembered a famous saying from the previous era that we want to have Poland becoming a power and people living good lives. Now we should translate that EU should be. We wish now that the EU goes into power, not just Poland.
Our shadow reporter have a question. Yeah, Michał.
Yeah, because you've talked much about people in the last two speeches, and may I ask, what are you particularly proud about in terms of delivering value added to the people? What projects, what benefits to the people have you delivered?
You mean projects or strategies?
Well, not strategies. Strategy is a document. I mean, real value added. I mean, real things that people use that improve the quality of services and so on.
Okay, good question. What's your value add in your region from ITI implementation? František, maybe two of you might react. So.
I would choose a set of projects in topic of mobility with developing of park and ride system around the city of Brno and extension of trams. It was important because there is a university club.
And why ITI was important in this case?
Because it was co-financed by
it was co-financed,
ITI.
okay. And it was your common strategy with your neighbors?
Yeah, it was actually the common strategy for the function urban area.
Okay, but the common action with the neighbors, okay.
Yes.
Any other value added for people, for society? Yeah, Primož? It might be good perspective from the rural areas.
I would say that in our area, the most added value were transnational projects of cooperation that are also capable in CLLD, and it helps people to visit also other places, and other people come there to us, and they see that there are almost the same problems all over the Europe, you know, that there is nothing unique in Slovenia about living in rural areas, and that people have to start to do something because nobody is coming to help you know. That's the motivation of the people.
Yeah, very important. Any other question from the audience? We have a room only for one, sorry, because we are already out of time skirts. No questions. There is one hand there, I see. If I may ask you for transfer the microphone. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And that's been a really interesting discussion. I'm Martin Ferry from European Policies Research Centre, and we've been involved in the ex-post evaluation of the territorial instruments. One thing that has definitely been brought out here and matches our findings is the added value in terms of strategic capacity building of these instruments. So local authorities and their partners are not just beneficiaries anymore, they're strategy builders, and I think this is really important in terms of how cohesion policy is allocated strategically in territories. But we didn't find that everywhere. Where capacity has been low, we found that the ability to take advantage of the possibilities of these instruments has been quite limited. Often there's a lack of trust between managing authorities at the regional level and local authorities in terms of audit, in terms of spending, deadlines, and so on. So my question is, first, what sort of capacity building, František has mentioned some examples, would be most effective in getting these, if you think, areas with less existing capacity to catch up? And secondly, what sort of, if we can think of one regulatory innovation that could help with this, what would it be? For example, maybe bringing the funds closer together, ERDF and ESF, to make things less complex on the ground. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for a very important question. Yeah, the question is going deeper with this administrative capacity, and actually, František, you mentioned it, so I don't know, maybe you can react. But very briefly, what's actually the means to get this administrative capacity? There are the expertise, more people, trust, as we heard, relations.
It's a mixture of all these elements.
Thanks.
But I
make it more complicated to the shadow report.
But I would highlight the capacity, really, as I have already said, to have enough experts in territories to think of sophisticated solutions in challenges that have already been mentioned several times. Because Otherwise, it's only phrase actually that you would like to do something with climate adaptation.
Okay.
But what concretely you have to do in your village or in your city, or together when we are talking about rural-urban linkages and problems that are there and that have been collected and described, for example, in publication from Eurocities, or Metrex is describing as well.
Thomas?
I would also underline the importance of networks like Metrex for an exchange of practitioners. That's really crucial.
Thanks. Any other? Artur?
I would just like to add what we've been talking about here. For instance, climate change has been mentioned. I guess we should start to talk honestly with the population, with inhabitants, because frequently we're just using phrases. We should say specifically how to achieve green energy, for instance. If we're getting into detail, the level of details, we find that things are not that simple or that obvious, so this is worth showing to the inhabitants. So this is not just trust to us, but the trust that we have to have, right? Yes, we have to talk to inhabitants openly. We're talking about ecology, environmental approach, as if it costs nothing. No, we have to tell them that if we want to live in good environment, we have to do something, we have to give something from us, and this transformation will be costly. Just like we're talking about zero emissions in transport, it is very easy to calculate on, for instance, the cost of hydrogen-operated bus. It all costs, but it's beautiful, but it costs, so we have to show it to know what we are choosing. Yesterday we had this panel about climate neutrality, where we have to show, are we actually willing, we as inhabitants, are we capable and willing to support made in Europe products?
Definitely for automotive made in Europe. Yeah? No, because there was the voice that yesterday was I attended the same panel. There was discussion about how we should support made in Europe products or made in Europe services. So I just reacted that in your case, automotive made in Europe is very important. So.
The problem is, it's not just important for the European market. That's where we're getting money from the rest of the world into the European Union. We are export-oriented. And that's why we have to stay competitive, or we are losing the markets. I think that's one of the most important challenges we see for the future. How can we stay competitive? I had the privilege to be to China with a partner region, and I can tell you, it's spooky if we compare our way to approach things, the time we need, compared to that what's happening in China. We are far away from being competitive, and we would better get our things together soon.
Thanks to have this look much more broader, the territorial dimension of cohesion policy. Actually, we are closing to the end of the discussion, so please give the applause to our panelists. They do the great job. Yes, you can take your seats. We are. No, it's just a moderator. I'm just a moderator. The worst case, the worst work is now ahead of our shadow reporter, but he has to wrap up now. It's make it consistent and also. So we are already in the time of the coffee break. So just to sum up, I will reside from last Monday. Just to have more comfort on your side to have a coffee and to attend the wrap-up session, which will be in 22 minutes or 20 minutes. I don't remember which room, you have to check. But organizers are really asking you to attend because it's a very important session, which will help you to understand what was also mentioned on other panels and what's actually kind of knowledge or lesson we learned from, let's say, all the panels. So I really welcome you to have this occasion to hear what was the whole session about, not only this panel. So please attend the wrap-up session. which we will have in 20 minutes. And then, of course, have and enjoy Kraków. It's very hard being from Warsaw and say to you that you have to enjoy Kraków, but you also, of course, welcome to visit Warsaw if you will find the time after the conference. But enjoy Kraków after afternoon, or maybe you stay till Saturday, and have safe trip back to your homes, and have, of course, territorial dimension made great again. Thanks.